Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to day 9 of our 15 days free training program on Python for AI. Today's session is very important because from today, your programs will start talking, thinking, and making decisions. So let's get started. Before we move on to today's topic, let's recap what we learned till now. So from day 1, we've learned about introduction to Python. That is, Python is a high level interpreted language and it is easy to write and easy to code and easy to understand. And the syntax is a human readable, understandable syntax. And we've known about the history of Python. So it was created by Guido van Rossum and the features of Python. So, features of Python are the ones which make it widely adopted and popular. And also, that is why it is easy to write and code and understand. And then we also got to learn about how we can install it on our local systems and to set up it. And we've also learned about Python IDEs, which are the workspaces where we can work with Python. For example, VS Code, Jupyter, Spider, PyCharm, etc. And then we got to know about literals. So literals are the data which we give to the programs. So without data, our programs cannot work. And then we got to know about variables or identifiers. So these are the names given to the data or literals. So variables point to these objects which consist the data. So variables consist of the references which point to the objects which store the data. And then we got to learn about data types. So we have mainly 6 types. So internally we have 14 types, but they are divided into 6 categories. So firstly, we got to know about fundamental category data types, and this consists of int, float, boolean, and complex. And then we got to know about sequence category data types. So these are used to store sequence of values. And fundamental categories store single values. So sequence category data types are string, bytes, byte array, and range. And we also completed learning list category data types. So they are list and tuple. So there are some predefined functions to the list. So we can modify the lists using the functions. And then we got to learn about set category data types. So in that we have set and frozen set. So what's the difference between list and set category data types are? So a list and tuple can have a unique and duplicate values, but here are sets and frozen sets only will contain unique values. So it will automatically remove duplicates. So that is the main difference. And list are mutable and tuple are immutable. Here set is mutable and frozen set is immutable. So this is just like a frozen version of a set. And then we've got to learn about dictionaries. So dict category data types. The values in a dictionary are stored in the format of key is to value. So key value pairs are stored in dictionary. So internally the values of set category data types and dictionary category data types are used to store using a mechanism or a process called as hashing. And then we got to learn about none type category data type, which consists of only one value, that is none. So none is a singleton value. And then yesterday we got to learn about typecasting techniques as well. So typecasting means the process of converting one possible type of value into another possible type of value. So that is typecasting. So we have 5 fundamental typecasting techniques, which are int, float, boolean, complex, and string. So if we want to convert any data type into int, we can use this int typecasting technique. And then if we want to convert any data type into float, we can use the float function. And then we can use boolean to convert any type of data into Boolean data type. And to convert it into complex, we can use the complex typecasting technique. And we can also convert it into string using the string typecasting technique. So till now, we've learned this. So if you guys are following it daily, please put a yes in the chat box so that we'll know. So put a yes if you're following the classes regularly. Okay, let's move on to today's topic. So today, firstly, we're gonna learn about the approaches to develop Python program. So there are mainly two approaches to develop a program in Python. So they are interactive mode or interactive approach and batch mode approach. So firstly, interactive approach. So in this approach, we, the programmers, we will give one line of statement at a time and will get the result for that statement. So if you type, let's say 5 plus 5, so Python will immediately, so this is my output. So Python will immediately give the result 10 for me. So that is how interactive approach will happen. So if we give one statement and for that statement we'll get the result at the same time. So this approach is most useful to test one statement at a time. So to check whether the statement is working or not, we can use the interactive approach. So this interactive approach is used for firstly testing and practicing and debugging small code. So interactive approach doesn't save your data to view in the future, okay? It is only suitable for testing, practicing and debugging. So it doesn't save the data to view in the future, so it is not suitable for problem solving. So if you want to use your data in the future and save it here, you can use the batch mode approach. So interactive approach is just like using a calculator, okay? So in calculator, we'll just perform 5 plus 5 or 10 by 5. In that way, we'll be doing one input and we'll get the result, right? So in the same way, interactive approach works. So it doesn't store any values or data. It just gives us, when we give an input, it will give the output immediately. So this is used for testing, practicing and debugging small code. And then moving on to batch mode approach. So in this approach, the Python programmer will write batch or group of executable statements and they'll save them on some file with an extension .py. So when you'll write like many lines of code, let's say batch of or group of executable statements I have. So what I'll do as a programmer is I'll save this whole code into a .py file. So this is a Python file. So for the Python file, the extension is .py. So I'll save this whole code in my .py file. Let's say program.py. So I will save it in a file and I'll run it at a time. So I'll run the full program. So in batch mode approach, what happens is the programmer writes batches of or groups of executable codes in a full one file and they'll save the whole code into a file with the extension .py and they'll run the full code. So that's how it works. You can also refer to these files in the future. So you can save them and you can use them again. So this batch mode approach is used for projects, AI systems, software development, and real world applications also. So these are the use cases of batch mode approach. So in a real life analogy, you can think of interactive approach as just like a calculator. So you'll just put some input and you'll get the result immediately. And it will not save any of the data to view in the future. But batch mode approach is like a full banking software, let's say. So it's like a total software. So you can just put all your group of codes into a file and you can run the full program at a time. And you can also view it in the future in the same file. So it's like a whole software thingy. And interactive approach is just like a calculator. You'll put an input and get it. And professionals always use batch mode approach only. So to build projects or AI systems or software development, real applications. So professionals always use batch mode approach. So that is a better approach. Then moving on to the topic. So now we are going to learn about displaying the result of a Python program. So to display your result of some program in your console, so we'll use a function called as print. So as we know, we use a function called as print. So print is used to display the result of the Python program on the console. So console is the place where you will get your output. Okay. So this is where we write our code, which is a code editor. And there are few syntaxes which we need to know. So Python print function is how Python speaks to the outside world. So that is how Python will speak to the outside world. So first syntax. So this is a basic syntax. So we can use a print of. So how we can use it is you can just give a print function and inside of that you can give a message. So message means we can give a string here. So that string we can put it instead of single quotes, the message. Okay. We can give it in a single quotes or double quotes, or you can give triple single quotes or else triple double quotes. So in this way, you can give the message or the string for your print function. So this is just a basic syntax. So if you see here, we have print of, the message here is hello Python world. So all of these single quotes, double quotes or triple single quotes and triple double quotes all will represent your strings. So this will print me the string hello Python world. So if you see here, we got the output, which is in a string format. And we can also use the double quotes and you can use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. So you'll get the same way, but all of these represent strings only. And then moving on to the second syntax for print. So we can print multiple values at once. So inside of print function, we can give value 1, value 2, and you can use a comma to separate these values and you can give n number of values at a time. So this displays the values on the console. So here we have a equals to 10. So a is an integer and we are storing a equals to 10. If you want to print a, you can just use print. Instead of that, I'll be giving a value. So here my variable name I can use to put it in the place of value. So I'll print a. So then here A refers to the objects consisting of the data 10, right? So now 10 will be printed. That's why. So in this way also you can print values. So as you can see, we got the value. And if I have more than one variables, what I can do is, firstly, I'll assign the values. So st number, here it is a int which consists of value 10. And then s name, serial name, we have this as a string. So this is a int and this is a string. So the name is Rosam. So when I want to print it, what I can do is I can use the print function. I'll give the variable names. Like first we have an integer variable, and for sure this should be separated using a comma, and then I'll give the string name, the variable name for the string we want to print. So I can use this and I'll print it. So when I want to print multiple values at once, I can use this method. And here we have both strings and values. So what we can do is, so here I have a value a equals to 10 and b equals to 20. And then I'm calculating c equal to a plus b. So c equal to a plus b means in the place of a, it will take 10, and in place of b, it will take 20, and c will be assigned with 30. So here I have value. First we have a string. So string will be printed as it is. So val of a equals to. So you should separate your string and variable using a comma. Okay. So your string will be printed as it is. And after this, I want to print a value. Okay. So that is why I'm giving the variable name a. So in place of a here, the value will be printed. That is 10. So your string, first your string message you should be giving, and then you should separate with a comma, and you should give your variable name such that first this string will be printed like this till here, and then your variable name, that is a here. So a contains the value 10, so 10 will be printed. Let's run it. So here we have a equals to 10 and b equals 20. So c equals to a plus b. So first I am printing the values of a. So as you can see here, it is a string value we've given here, and we have separated with a comma. So here by default, the separator or SCP parameter is space. So all the values will be separated with the space. If you see here, I got a space between this. This is a string which I've given here, and this is a variable that is 10, a equals to 10, right? So that is printed. So this is separated by default with a space. And moving on, I can also put the string in a triple double quotes. So that way I can represent this string, and then with a comma I'll separate it and I'll give the value a. So that will also print me val of a equals to 10. And I can do it in a reverse order also. So first I'll print a, that is 10. So what happens is 10 will be printed, and we have a separator, right? So it will give a space, and then it will print our string value, that is the val of a. So 10 is the value of a. It will print that. So this is our output. So in this way, we can also print our elements or variables. And then here we have a equals to 100. So I'm printing first. In the place of a, 100 will be printed. And then we have a comma, right? So we'll give a space there, and our string will be printed then. Is the val of a. So let me just print that. So here we got the output. 100 is the val of a. And then moving on. So this is the sum we did. So here I want to print the sum of a and b. So first a equals to 10 and b equals to 20. Then c equals to a plus b. So c will be assigned with 10 plus 20. So c will be assigned with 10 plus 20. That is 30. So c equals to 30 here. Now I am trying to print the sum of a and b. So here first the string will be printed. So that is sum equals to will be printed, and we have a comma, right? So this is separating. So we will get a space here, and then c will be printed. So c is here 30. So sum equals to 30 will be printed. And then we can also print in a reverse order. First we'll print the variable c. That is an integer 30. So 30 and then we have a comma. So separator is a space and is the sum. So 30 is the sum will be printed. So in this way we can print, and we can also print elaborate sentence. So sum of, so this is a string. So first the string will be printed as it is, sum of, and we have a comma, so we'll give a space there, and a means 10. So sum of 10, we have a comma again, and we'll give a space there, no underscores, just a space, and your and string will be printed with a here. And then again we have a variable b. So b consists of 20. So in place of b, 20 will be replaced. And here we'll have a string that is equals to. So equal to will be printed with a space. And then again we have c variable. So c variable consists of 30 right now. So it'll give a space and it will print 30. So we'll get a elaborate sentence that is sum of 10 and 20 equals to 30. So in that way you can print the values. So as you can see, sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30. So in this same way, I've printed int and a string also. So as you can see here, st number equals to 10, which is an integer, sname equals to John. So here, my number is, this is a string, right? So string will be printed as it is. And in place of st number, we'll be printing 10. So because st number equals to 10, right? And my name is will be printed as it is. And in place of s name, I'll be printing John because s name consists of John, right? So we'll give a placeholder that is our variable name. So in place of this variable name, the value will be printed. So st number equals to 10, s name equals to John. And as you can see, my number is, the string is printed. So till here it is the string. So as we given space here, so it got a space. And then as we are separating with commas, so it got separated with the space, empty space. And we'll print st number that is 10. So here 10 is printed. And we have a comma again. So a space separator. And in this string, space and space my space name space is space. So we have a and my name is with the spaces, right? So here from here to here our string is printed. So this is printed here. And we have a comma separator again. So here we got a space again, and S name is printed, which is John. So John is printed here. So that is how this print statement worked. And the fourth syntax is, so we're starting the professional formatting right now. So till now they are all basic formattings. So first one is format. So you can use a format function to print your statements. So I have st number equals to 10 again, and s name equals to John. So now I want to print these both in a sentence. So what I should do is, first, my number is, so inside of the string only you should be giving everything firstly. So in that, how it works is, my number is my text I want to print. And here I want to print 10, let's say. So what I'll do is, in place of the value where I want to print a value outside of the string, I'll be giving a curly braces. So first I want to print, let's say, st number. So I'll give a curly braces like a space holder for this 10. And my name is. And then I want to print John here, let's say. So there I'll give a curly braces again. So in these places, my values will be printed. So what we can do to print the values in these places is, we can do dot format. So dot format, inside of dot format, you should give your values what you want to print. Okay. So we'll write dot format. We should complete the string. Okay. So here if you see, we need to complete the string. Inside of that only we should give the text and the curly braces. And then after completing the string, we need to put dot format. And first I want to print st number. So st number will refer or be printed at the first curly braces. So the first value which I give in format will be printed at the first curly braces. And then I have s name. So this s name will be the second value in format will be printed at the second curly braces. So the values will be printed respectively. So what happens is it will print my number is, so the first curly braces, it will represent the st number, right? So it will be 10. And my name is, and my name is, in the second curly braces, it will represent S name. So S name consists of John. So my name is John. So this will be our output. So wherever you want to print a value, you can put a curly braces, and after enclosing everything in the string value, you can do dot format, and inside of the dot format, you can give the values you want to print respectively for the curly braces. So first value in a format will be printed at the first curly braces, and second value inside of the format will be printed at the second curly braces. So if I run this, I'll be getting my number is at the first curly braces, st number will be printed, which is 10. And then my name is S name. So here we have a curly brace. So S name will be printed in place of this curly braces, and that is S name equals to John, right? So John. So my number is 10 and my name is John. So in this way you can use the dot format. So this is a second example. So here I want to print a equals to 10 first. So we are assigning the values to the variables a equals to 10 and b equals to 20. So now c equals to a plus b. Now we are trying to print sum of, we have a curly braces here. So I want to print some value here first. So I will keep curly braces and one more curly braces equals to curly braces. So sum of so and so is some value. So here first we have a. So that a value will be printed at the first curly braces, and the b's value will be printed at the second curly braces because it is a second value, right? So it will be printed at the second curly braces. And then C value will be printed at the third position because it is here, it is in a third, right? So instead of format, you should separate your variables, and the first value will be printed at the first curly brace, second value at the second, and third value will be printed at the third. So now the output we will get is sum of A, that is 10. So sum of 10 and so B, and 20 is equals to, here it is C, right? So 10 plus 20 is 30. So sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30 will be printed. So if I print this, I'll be getting sum of 10 and 20 equals to 30. So this is how you can use dot format to print your values. And then I have one more string. So here what I'm doing is sum of some value. So I'm keeping a curly brace there, and one more value is equals to a value. So here this is my string. So this is enclosed in a string, and we'll give dot format. So in this place, I want to print A. So first I'll be writing A. And then in this place, second place of curly braces, I'll be printing B. So I'll write here B, comma. In place of third curly braces, I want to print the value of C. So I'll be giving C. So in this way, this code is working, and the output we'll get is sum of 10 comma 20 is equals to 30. So this is how the values are being mapped. So the first value to the first, second value to the second, and third value to the third respectively. And moving on, Here we can also perform the operations inside of this format itself. So what happens here is first we are trying to find sum. So sum of A and B. So if you see here, first we have a curly brace. So the first value here is A. So sum of A and the second value which is B. So sum of A and B. So sum of A comma B. We'll insert the values here. I'm just writing the variables which is taking equals to, we have curly braces, so that value is A plus B, right? So A plus B. So it will print sum of 10 comma 20. So this variables point to the locations which consists of 10 and 20, right? So in place of A, 10 will be printed and B place of B, 20 will be printed. So sum of 10 comma 20 is equals to, so what is A plus B? A plus B is 10 plus 20. So that is 30. 10 plus 20 is 30, right? So it will directly be printed 30. And then we have a tab space here. So tab space means we'll get a some amount of space here, not just the space bar, small space, we'll get a bigger space. That is a tab space. And then we are printing sub, so subtraction. So subtraction, first curly braces will point to the next here, this A. So subtraction of A comma, the second curly braces will point to the next value, what is B. So B is equals to the, here this curly braces will point to A minus B. So A minus B. So subtraction of 10 comma 20 is equals to 10. So now let me print this. So yeah, if you see here, we've got the values. Sum of 10 comma 20. So this value here is sum of 10 comma 20 equals to 30. And we got a tab space. So as we gave slash tab, we got tab space here. And then we have subtraction. So sub of 10 comma 20 equals to 10 minus 20 is minus 10. So that will be exactly printed here. So this is how you can use the print function using the format. So this format is used for good and readable syntax. So the characteristics of format function is good and readable. So this is easier. And moving on, the fifth syntax is the format specifiers. So format specifiers here is, we can format how we want to like print our value. For example, here we have A equals to 10. So A equals to 10. First A is 10 and B is equals to 1.2. So B is equals to 1.2, right? So here C equals to A plus B. So when it wants to add these both, internally Python will do the implicit casting and it will just take this 10 as 10.0 and it will add it and your output will be C equals to 11.2 directly in a float value only. So this is how it will work. So if you see here, we are doing a normal print first to know the comparison. Okay. First A equals to 10 and B equals to 1.2 and then C equals to A plus B, which is 10 plus 1.2. It will be considered as 10.0 plus 1.2 and C will be 11.2. So if you see here, we got, this is a normal type of printing. So we are just printing string, comma, we are separating it with a comma and we are printing the variable C. So sum is equals to 11.2. So this is a normal print. So if I want to use a format function to print this, what I can do is I'll give sum equals to the curly braces. So in place of curly braces, this C will be printed because This is enclosed in a string and dot format. So here C will be printed in the place of, C value will be printed in the place of this curly braces. So if you run this, we'll be getting sum is equal to 11.2. So now I want to specify C directly in a float value. So here float value or the floating point number is used to represent with the percentile F. So what this does is it will give a default precision. So 6 decimal places value it will give directly. So if a value is 11.2, only one decimal point is there, right? So how, if I use percentile F, how it will print is 11.2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it will give me 6 places after decimal point. After decimal point, it will give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 places it will give by default when I use this. So this is how we are using it right now. So firstly, we have a equals to 10 and b equals to 1.2, c equals to a plus b, which is 11.2. So now I'm using a float format specifier. So if you see here, sum is equal to percentile f. So when I want to print the C value, what should I do is, when I want it in a float, first I'll give a string sum is equals to. So in this place, I want to print the float value of my value C. So C is 11.2. I want to print it in a float value. That is 6 decimal places, right? So where I want to print it, I'll be giving percentile F and I'll enclose it in a string. So here I want to print my C value in a float. So after enclosing this in a string, what I'll do is I will take percentile and I want to print C value, right? So I'll print C here. Like I'll keep the C. So this is how I can print using format specifiers. So what it does is it will take the C value, which is 11.2, and it will print it in the float format specifier type. So how this works is, so if you see here, we are using a float format specifier. So sum is equals to 11.2000000. So if you look at here, as we use the float specifier, so this will give me 6 decimal points, right? So that's why we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I got 6 numbers after the decimal point. So in this way, I can manipulate my output or the result, and I can specify how I want to print my output. And here if you see, if I want only 2 decimal places, so basically the percentile F will give me 6 decimal places, right? I only want 2 decimal places after my decimal point, let's say. So what I can do is I can specify percentile 0.2 F. So that's how I'll get 2 decimal places. So this is how I can get or specify I want a float value with the 2 decimal points of C. So here what it will print is, so it will print sum is equal to 11.20 because first we have a text that is sum equals to, and then we have percentile 0.2 F. So it will print a float value with decimal point, decimal positions only 2 after the decimal point. And the C value it will be printing. So in place of this, the C will be printed with the specification of 2 decimal points. So C is 11.2, right? So after point only 2 numbers. So that is 2 and it will fill with all zeros. So how many decimal points are there? Remaining it will fill with a 0. So this is why we got the output sum equals to 11.20. And then moving on, I can print multiple values at once. So multiple format specifiers I'm using here. So when I use this, First, A is 10, right? So integer values, how we can specify it is, we can use a percentile D. So percentile D is used for integers and percentile F is used for float values. Okay. And if I want only one decimal point, I'll give 0.1. So percentile 0.1 F. If I want 2, I'll give percentile 0.2 F and so on. And if I want to print a string, I'll use percentile S. So to print a string, I'll give, wherever I want to print the string, I'll give a percentile S. So now we are using only percentile D and percentile F here, okay? So firstly, I have percentile D. So the first value in this inside of percentile, I'll be giving all the values I want to print. So first this A will correspond to this percentile D. So as this is the first value, so this will correspond to percentile D. So what it will print is, it will print A in the form of integer only. So A will be printed as 10 itself. And we'll print and percentile F. So B will be printed in a float format. So percentile F means it will give 6 decimal points, right? So it will give me 1.2. So B is basically 1.2. I am specifying percentile F. So 6 decimal points, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all the other decimal positions will be filled with zeros because there are no more here numbers. So 1.00000 will be equals to. So it will print this equals to, and C will correspond to this 0.1, percentile 0.1 F. So C value is 11.2, right? So 10 plus 1.2 is 11.2. So I want to print C value with a single decimal point. So I am using here 0.1 F. So what this does is, it will give only one decimal position after the decimal point. So it will print 11.2. So directly it is only one decimal position, right? So it will directly print 11.2. So this is how this will work. So using multiple format specifiers, we can print the values. So it will print sum of 10 because A, here we have mentioned it as an integer only, right? So percentile D is integer. So it will print it in the integer format. And then B, it will be printed as percentile F. So F means float value with 6 decimal points. So that is why 1.200000 is printed. Initially is this values, but I've specified percentile F. So it's printed with 6 decimal points. And moving on, it is C will represent the next percentile value. That is percentile 0.1 F. So 0.1 F means it will only give me one decimal position after decimal point. So as C is directly 11.2, we have only one decimal position. So it is directly printed here, 11.2. And then moving on. So here if you see, so first A will be printed as an integer only. So here the first percentile is percentile D. So A will represent this percentile D and A will be printed as integer only, that is 10. So sum of 10 and is a text here, and percentile 0.1 F. So B is printed as a float value with a single decimal point position. So after decimal point, I want only single position in B also now. So here we already have only single position. So directly 1.2 will be printed is equals to C will be referring to the next percentile F value, that is percentile 0.1 F. So directly it will print 11.2. As there is only one decimal position, it will print 11.2. Now if I print this, I'll be getting sum of 10 and 1.2 is equals to 11.2. So in this way, I can specify the result however I want. And then moving on, here we have So here I want to print A also as a float value now. So A here I'm specifying percentile F. So A will be printed as percentile F. So that is 6 decimal positions. So sum of A, which is 10, right? So 10 will be printed in the format of percentile F. So percentile F means 6 decimal positions. So it will convert the integer value into float value automatically. So this integer value will be converted into float and it will print by default 6 positions, that is 10.000000. So this is how it will convert your value into the desired value using the format specifier and it will print your value. So next we have AND. Now B will be pointing to this, that is 0.1 F. So percentile 0.1 F. So we'll get only single decimal point after decimal. So single decimal position after decimal point. And that is equals to, again we have percentile 0.1 F. So C will be representing that row. So as it is 11.2, we want only single position. So that is only printed now. So now if I print this, execute it, I'll be getting sum of, so the decimal A is printed in a float format. So it is converted into float using the percentile F and it is printed in this way and 1.2 is equals to 11.2. So this way you can get to print any value in your desired format or data type. Next we have, so next I want to print each and every value A, B, C in a float type with 1 decimal place. So here A will be converted. So A is a 10, right? So when I give percentile 0.1 F for that, so this will convert 10 into 10.0 and B will be representing this value, right? So B, what happens is B is 1.2. I want a single decimal position only. So the single decimal position means 1.2 only. And C also I'm printing with a single decimal position. So that is 11.2 directly. So C is 11.2, right? So as it is single position, we are printing that itself. So here my format specifiers will convert my data, existing data into the format or the data type, whichever we want to print. So here it will print sum of, so A is converted into this, right? So sum of 10.0 and 1.2. So that is B value 1.2 is equals to, so is equals to 11.2. So in this way, you can print your values using format specifiers. So this is the output we'll get for this code. And then moving on, we are printing integer and string together using this formatting. So here we have st number equals to 10. So st number equals to 10 and s name, let's change this name. Let's say Lily. So my name here is Lily and my number. So I'm printing string and integer together right now. So as I've told you, percentile D will represent integer. And if I want to print a string, I'll be using percentile and S. So this will hold the string. So this will represent the string value. And when you pass the values, so here my number is, so this will be printed as it is. So we have a percentile D. So here, after enclosing everything in a string, we have percentile st number. So st number will represent the first value. That is the integer value. So integer value will be printed. So my number is 10. So we have st number equals 10, right? So 10. And name is will be printed as it is. And we have a percentile s. So here the S name will represent this percentile S and that will be printed. So S name here is Lily, right? So my number is 10 and name is Lily. So it will be printed in that way. So now if I print this, so this is how we'll get a output. using format specifiers when we want to print both integer and string. Now I have a value b equals to true. So b is a boolean value here. As you know, true false values are boolean, right? So b is a boolean value here. Now what we are doing is we are giving val of b equals to. So it will print directly val of b equals to. And here what happening is percentile s. So I want to print this b in the form of string. So that is why I've used the format specifier percentile s. So this will expect a string, right? So that is why as this percentile s will expect a string from you and your b is boolean, right? So that is why you're typecasting this or you're converting this b true value into the string using this. So what your percentile like string of b will do is string of b will convert this true boolean value into a string true. So as we have a format specifier which will expect a string, we are converting this b into string using the str function, and this string will be printed at the position of percentile s. So that is how it is working here. So b is true, and now I'm converting that b into string and I'm printing it using the percentile s. So that's why I got value of b equals to true. So instead of dot format, instead of percentile, that is the format specifier, I can also use dot format. So what I'll do is, so b is true itself here, and this curly braces will be replaced by the value of b. So instead of format, I have b. So curly braces will be replaced by the value of b. Here, value of b is equals to true, right? So this is a boolean type. So this is a string inside. So what happens here is this format function will automatically convert data types. So we don't need to do specifically here like we did string, right? First I've converted this true into string type using the string, and I'm then printing it in the position of percentile s. But here we can directly, instead of doing this, we can directly do dot format of b. So format will directly convert your data into the desired data types. So here I want to print in the curly braces true, right? So it will directly convert it and it will print me value of b equals to true. So that we won't specifically need to mention str of, and we don't need to convert it. So here, if you see here, I have didn't used the string conversion and still I got a value neatly. So format will handle the conversion of data types automatically. And here I am trying to print a value which is a equals to 100 first. And I want to print this in a integer type only. So integer means percentile d will be using, right? So inside of this string, I'll be giving where I want to print a, there I'll be giving percentile d. So I want to print a in integer. So here what happens is it'll print val of a equals to, so a I want it in a integer type only. So a equals to 100. This is integer directly. So it will print 100. So in place of percentile d, your a value will be printed. So you need to not forget this percentile here. So you should be giving percentile a after your string, as you want to print a in place of this. So here my output would be, first I'll run a and then I'll run this. So I'll get value of a equals to 100. So now what's happening is I'm printing this integer value using a percentile s. So that is percentile s will expect a string. So this is a string specifier, right? So this is a string specifier. So this will expect a string from me. But my value a is 100. So this is an int type. but my percentile s will expect a string from me. So what I'll do is I'll be doing str of a. So what str of a does is it will convert 100 to a string 100, and then it will print this string 100 in the place of percentile s. So I'm printing this integer value using a percentile s specifier, that is a string specifier. So that is why here if you see we've got the value of a equals to 100. And then we can also print your integer into a float value. So I want to print my a equals to 100, which is an integer value, as a float value. So what I'll do is I'll be using percentile f here. So percentile f is a floating point number or specifier, okay? So floating point. For float values, we'll be using it. So this percentile f directly, it will convert your any data or number into 6 decimal places by default. So this is by default. If you want only one, you can use 0.1 f. And if you want 2 decimal places, you can use 0.2 f. So by default, it will use 6 decimal places. And it will print what is, so val of a equals to percentile f. So percentile f will be expecting a float value, right? So it will expect float value. But my a 100 is a integer type here. So what I'll do is I'll be doing float of a. So this float of a value will be printed in place of percentile f. So float of a, what it will do is it will convert my 100 value into 100.12345 6. So it will convert this and this will be printed in the place of percentile f. So that's how I can print an integer using a float specifier. So if you see, I got value of a equals to 100.000000. So that's how I can print it. And then I have a syntax. So the next syntax is using f strings. So this is a modern addition to the print statement, and this is cleaner. So this format is cleaner and faster and also used in industry right now. And also it is used in AI projects. So I recommend you guys to use this because it is a cleaner and better alternative. You can use basic ones also. If you want to print it in a professional way, you can use it, this f strings. So f strings are nothing but I have a variable here. Let's say name is equal to Jane. So the Jane is the name. And I want to print this using f string. So how I can do it is, first I'll be using a print function. And inside of this print function, this is a f string, right? So you'll be writing f and there will be a string. So in the name only you can understand f string. So you'll be writing f and then you'll start and enclose your data inside of a string. So here I want to print my name is Jane. So what I'll do is my name is, I'll write, and here I want to print Jane, right? So what I can do is I can give a curly braces, and inside of this curly braces only I'll put the variable name which I want to print here. So name is the, so Jane refers to name, right? So that is why inside of this curly braces I can put the variable name and I can print this. I'll close it, I'll enclose everything in a string, and then I'll close this print function, and then I can print this easily. Okay, first we need to run name equals to Jane. And then I'll print using a f string. So this is how we can print my name is Jane. Let's say I want to print some value 200. Now I want to print with the f string, let's say. So what I'll do is I'll use f of a string, f string, and I'll start my number is, I'll give a curly braces. So inside of that curly braces, I'll give my value, that is n. So here n is equals to 20 and the string will be printed neatly. So in place of n, what happens is the n value equals to 20, right? So this 20 will be printed in the place of n. So in this way, you can neatly understand. You don't need to map them. Like in format, you will be mapping, right? So the first value in format will go to the first curly braces and second for value will go to the second curly braces. You don't need to worry about all that. So directly, wherever you want to print a value, you can use curly braces, and inside of that, you can give your variable name like name or n or I, anything. So you can give your variable name directly inside of the curly braces and you can print the string. So this is how f string work, and this is a cleaner way and it is preferred right now. And then we will move on to the next topic. But okay, everyone, now let's learn about some advanced topic inside of a print function. So print function consists of a parameter called as end. So this end, what this does is it will specify what to print at the end. So what end does is it will specify what to print at the end. So by default, the end value is equals to a new line. So percentile n means if you have learned about C language, in that we'll be using this. So percentile n means new line. So by default, end parameter will refer to new line. So that is why when we print two values at once, so if you see, first hello will be printed and this hello's end separator will be there, right? Sorry, end parameter. So end parameter is by default new line. So that is why here next statement is printed in a new line. And for this world string, here also end is new line, right? For by default. So that is why if you see we have a new line here and there are no more statements I've printed. So that is my output. So by default, the end parameter refers to the slash n, which is new line. So that is why your outputs will be given in new line. So if I want to specify the end separator, what I can do is I can give it manually. So this is my string. Let's say hello is my string. And then I'll give a comma. So let me write it first. So what I'll do is after I write the string I want to print, I'll give a comma and there I'll specify the parameter end. So this is the parameter end and I want a space. So after printing hello, I want to end it with a empty space and then print world. So I want to print it that way. That is why I'm giving an empty space in place of an end parameter. So if I print this collectively now, so if you see here, after hello, it is ended with the space I've given. And for world, by default, it is again new line, right? So that is why here, if you see, we have a space here in the new line. So that is how end will work. So if I give here, let's say, and and equals to, I want to print a space, the end. So when I print this, so if you see here, after hello, it will be ended with a space. So here the hello is there and it is ended with a space. And then I've printed world. So world is here. That is the next statement. And this world's end statement is space the end. So here this is the end parameter of the second statement. So this is how end parameter will work. And then we have one more parameter which is which is the separator. So this parameter is the separator. So this will tell how you will separate, like, so one data to another data, how you will separate, it will be there. So it tells that. So by default, your separator is a empty space. Okay, so that is why when you print 2, 3 at a time and you give a comma, right? So these will be printed with some spaces. So it'll give a space and it'll print the second one, and it'll give a space and it'll print the third one. So by default, the sep parameter, so by default, sep is an empty space. So empty, some space with a string. Okay. So how it prints is, let me try the default one first. So now I want to print three strings. So it's string A, string B, and string C. So if you see here, these are separated with one spaces. So by default, separator is a single space. And if I want to change it, I can just give, after the strings, I can give comma. I can give the sep parameter is equals to. Now I want, let's say I want it in this way. The separator I want is a hyphen. So what I'll do is I'll give in a string hyphen. So now it will print it in this way. So these strings are separated using a hyphen. Before, by default, it is separates with an empty space. Now it is separating with a hyphen because I've manually mentioned that. So that is why I got A dash B dash C. And then moving on. Now we're going to know about the input function. So this is how Python will listen or take our input. So when an user want to give input to it, rather than hard coding your variables in your programs, if you want to give a dynamic input, you can use an input function. So to read the data dynamically from the keyboard, we have two predefined functions. So they are the normal input function, or you can give some prompt inside of that input function also. So prompt or message you can give inside of that. So how this works is, first the input function. So this function is used for reading any type of data from the keyboard. So it will read data and always it will return in a string. So when you take some input, okay, let's say A equals to input. So I want the user to give my value A. So that is why I'll give input function. So when a user, if he gives 10 or A or John, anything, this will be taken as a string only. So this input function always returns a string value only. Even if you give a number or a character or a string or a float value also, it will take it as a string only. So that's why it will read any type of data from the keyboard in the form of string. So how you can give is, you can give a variable name equals to input. So here the variable name is of the class string, because we'll take a string form, right? So input function will take a string form of data. So that is why variable will be a type of class string, that is string data type. So if you want the value, the input value, if you want it in a int format, what you can do is you can just use the typecasting techniques like int of input, and that I can give it as 0. So what happens is, first it will take the input. Let's say I have given 10. So it will take input string as a 10, and that 10 string will be converted into an integer 10 using the int function. So in this way, you can change the data which you take from a user or the keyboard. So it will take as a string. If you want to change it into your desired data type, you can just typecast it using int or float function or string. Obviously, it is already in a string, so we don't need that. Or if you want it a bool, you can use it bool. And if you want it in a complex data type, you can use a complex typecasting technique. So in this way, you can take the data from user. So first, I have a program to find multiplication of two numbers. So here, first it will print enter first value. So let me just print this. So first it will print enter first value. Basically, I'll just run this. So it will work as a single program. But I'll explain you what's happening here. First, it will give me the print function directly. It will print this. So that is why I got here. And a equals to input will take the input from the user. And again, the print enter second value will also be printed. Like a string, it will be printed. And it will give some time to, like, there's no time limit, but yeah, it will give a space to take the input from the user. So that number, what, let's say 20. First, let's say he gave 10. That 10 will be given into the A variable. And if we give 20 for the next second value, this 20 will be assigned to the variable B. So then it will print val of A. So val of A equals to, so we have a curly braces. So this is a format type. So first A will be printed in the place of first curly braces. So A is 10, right? So 10, val of A equals to 10, and is type equals to, so type of, so the data type of A I'm printing. So type of, you can get the data type of some variable using the type function, right? So you'll give type of A. So this type of A value will be printed at the second curly braces. So type of A, here it is a string initially. So that will be printed. Same for B also. Val of B. So B is 20, let's say. So value of B. So val of B equals to, in the place of curly braces, first B will be printed. So it is the first value in format, right? So first curly braces will be filled with B value. So B equals to 20. Next, and is type. And is type. So I have not performed any typecasting here, right? So input will directly take a string value, as I've said. So that is why B, it will do equals to string. So here the output, let's see. First, we got enter first value. So enter first value. Let's take 10. Then it will print the next print, that is enter second value. Now I want, it gave me a space to enter, right? So here we'll enter 20, let's say. So this 20 will be assigned to B. And as we have done it, so first it will print val of A equals to 10. So this print statement, so val of A equals to 10. And then, and is type equals to type of A, that is class of string. Input function will directly take a string value, right? So that is why it printed class string. And second, so the next value is print val of B equals to, so we, as we have given 20, val of B equals to 20. And then is type format. So type is equals to class type, as a input function will take string only. The class initially will be string. So now here, if you see x1 equals to float of A. So I am typecasting A, which is a 10 value. So A is 10, right? Initially it is a string. And B is 20, it is also string value. So here I am typecasting float of A. So I'm converting string 10 into float 10. So what happens is this string 10 will be converted into 10.0. And float of B is given to x2, right? So what happens is 20 string will be converted into 20.0. So this string is converted into float using the float typecasting. And then we are giving x3 equals to x1 asterisk x2. Asterisk means here it will give multiplication. So what it will do is 10.0 into 20.0. So that is 200.0, right? So x3 will be that value. And here the x1 value will be printed in the first curly braces, and x2 value will be printed in the second curly braces, and x3 value will be printed in the third curly braces. So here That is why we got multiplication. So this string mul of 10. So this 10 string is converted into float, right? So 10.0. And then the second value, that is 20. So 20 string is converted into 20.0 using this float typecasting. So that is at 20.0. And then we got the output x3, that is 200.0. So 10.0 and 200.0, 20.0 is 200.0. So that is how we can perform calculations by taking the input from the user. So we can also find multiplication of two numbers. So instead of giving the print statements one by one, I've just given enter two values. So first it will take the value of A. Let me give 4. And then it will take the value of B. So this line will be printed. So here B is given as, let's say, 5. So what happens is, first they are typecasting A value, which is a 4, right? This is a string. So this string is converted into float, that is 4.0, and B is 5, right? So 5 string. So this is converted into 5.0 using this typecastings. So x1 is 4.0 and x2 is 5.0. So now x3 equals to x1 into x2. So x3 equals to 4.0 into 5.0, which is 20.0. Yeah. So this will give. So initially float means it will have 6 decimals, right? I'm just writing in a short format. So if you see, I have given format specifier. So this is a float format specifier. So I want 2 decimal points. So that is why x1 will be printed in a 2 decimal points. That is multiplication of percentile 0.2f means it will take 2 decimal points, 2 decimal positions after decimal point. So that's why mul of 4.00 comma for 5 also. So that x2 value also. So here x2 represents this value, right? So x2 also 2 decimals. So this is equals to x3 will be represented using this 0 point. So 20.00. So that is why I got this value. And moving on to the next program. Instead of doing it in a number of steps, I can just do it directly. So when I'm taking input only, I can just enclose this input function inside of float value. So if I want a float value, I'll be enclosing this input function inside of the float value. Or if I want my input to be an int value, let's say. So inside of this int typecasting technique, I'll be putting input function. And I'll be assigning this to a variable. So when a user gives, let's say, a value 10, so input will take a string of 10 and this will be converted into integer 10 using the typecasting technique. So here if you see, it is converted into float type. So let me just run this code first. So enter two values, it is given. So I want to enter two values. So first it will take the x1 value, float of input. So let me give 2. And then it will take the x2 value, float of input, that is 3. So here I have given formatting. So x1 will be printed at the first curly braces. So x1 is 2, right? So as it is float, it is by default float is like just 1 point. So multiplication of 2.0, this is x1, and x2 will be printed in the next curly braces. So 3.0, this is x2, that is equals to x1 into x2. Directly inside of this format function only, I'm giving the operation also. That is x1 into x2. So x1 into x2 is 2.0 into 3.0, which is 6.0. So that is how it's printed, x1 into x2. So in this way, directly I can take the input from the user and typecast it and use it however I want. And then the second syntax is input of message. So inside of this input, I can just give a prompt. Instead of using a print separately and using input, what I'll do is inside of this input only, I'll give the prompt which I want to print here in my console. So this function is used for reading any type of data from keyword and it will be taken in a string format. Additionally, it will give user a prompting message. So when we give just a input value or the input function, user won't know what to enter, right? So you'll give a prompt. Along with this input function, you'll give a prompt or message. So it says the user to do the action, like enter a word or enter a number. So that way, it will work that way. So variable name equals to input of message will be given. So here variable is of type string. If you want perform float casting, the input will take directly a string type or data. And here message is also of a string type. So it can represent any user promoting message. So if I want to give enter first value, I should give it in a string format, right? So here the message or the prompt message should be in a string. So here if you see A equals to input of enter first value. So what happens when I run this is, this will give, first let me run the whole thing. So first it will give the enter first value. So this prompt of this input function which is assigned to A will be given. So enter first value, I'll be giving 3. And then this enter second value prompt will be printed, which is the prompt of the input function which is assigned to B. So I'll be giving 5, let's say. So the 3 value will be given to A and 5 value will be given to B. So directly, if we get a string, we will get a better readability and understanding of the code, right? So what's happening to understand it? We can just queue the prompt message and we can take the inputs from the user. And then what's happening here? X1 equals to float of A. Here typecasting is happening. So typecasting into float value. So these string values are converted into float here separately. So here A is 3, right? So x1 will be equals to 3.0, B is 5. So x2 equals to 5.0. And then x3 equals to 3.0 into 5.0. So here we are using directly a format. So that is equals to x1 will be printed at the first curly brace, x2 will be printed at the second curly brace, x3, which is the multiplication of both a and b, or x1 and x2 will be printed in the third curly brace. So as these are float values, so multiplication of 3.0 comma 5.0 will be equal to 15.0. So 3 into 5 is 15, right? So float is 15.0. So this is how we can work with input along with a prompt message. Then we have a program for accepting two values and multiplying them. Obviously, the multiplication again. But this is a better and cleaner code. So this is a short form. Instead of first taking the inputs and then converting them into floats like the typecasting, we can directly take the input from the user and typecast it in the same step. And then we can assign that value to our variable. And directly we can perform the multiplication or addition or whatever operation you want to perform. So here first it will print the value, enter first value, and user will enter first value, that is us. So we'll give the value and let's say I have given 2. So this 2 directly because of the float typecasting, which is a string 2 will be converted into 2.0 directly, and this will be assigned to x1. And then enter second value, string will be printed. So then you will enter the value, let's say 4. So I'll give 4. So 4 here is a string, right? So directly it will be typecasted into float data type. So 4.0 directly it will be typecasted, and this will be assigned to x2 value. So here we have assigned it x2, right? So this will be the values. So when you do x3 equals to x1 into x2, 2.0 into 4.0 will be happening. And then when you print it using a format function, you can just print the x will be printed at this first curly brace and x2 will be printed at the second, and then x3, which is the multiplication of both, will be printed at the third curly braces. So let me run this. So enter first value I got. So I'll be giving 2 and enter second value, that is 4. So as you can see, we directly got multiplication of 2.0 comma 4.0 equals to 8.0. So these are given directly in the float formats. So let us write some division function, let's say. We'll take int this time, okay? X1, or let's say a equals to int of, I'm performing the typecasting, and inside of this I'll give a input function. So I will take the input from the user. So now I want to mention that enter first number. So user will enter a first number. Then I want him to enter a second number. So I want to typecast it directly, and I will print, I'll give the input function. So this will take the input from user, and what I'll mention for him is enter second number. So here it will be taking the input, and now what I want to do is I want to perform a division, let's say. So C equals to A by B. Now I want to use a F string. So I want to print using a F string right now, because it is a preferred one, right? So let's directly use an F string to print these. So how you can print it is print of F string means first you will need to write an F and then the string. So here division of, in the curly braces I'll be giving first A, and so I want to write division of A and B is this A by B value, right? That is C. So here I'll be giving curly braces B. So division of, in place of A, it will print the A value, and place of B, it will print the B value. That will be equals to the value that is C. Okay. So this is how I'm using a F string directly. So this is to find a division of two numbers. So enter first number. So I want to enter 8, let's say. So second number is I want to enter 2. So if you see here, as this is a division, so division operator will give you float value only. So that is why you got a float value here. So division operator always gives a float value. So here enter first number 8. So 8 is an integer. So it is taken as a, so here what happened is 8 is taken as a string, and using this int function it is converted into integer. And then second number, which is 2, it is taken as a string 2, and this is converted into int using the typecasting, that is into 2. So here C, what we did is C equals to 8 by 2. As the division operator always gives you a float value, the value will be 4.0. So that is why here I've used a F string to print it directly and a neat format. And this is a cleaner version, right? So F string I'll start, and inside of that I'll be giving division of A. A means 8. So it is an integer type, right? So 8. And B is 2. So it is an integer type. That is equals to C, which is its division of A and B. It will give a float value. So that is why directly we'll get 4.0. So that's why we got division of 8 and 2 is equals to 4.0. So today we've learned about the approaches to develop Python program, and also, so first we learned about the approaches to develop a Python program, and then we learned about the print function syntaxes. So there are 3 basic types and 3 professional printing. So basic is you can just print a message, or you can print a value. You can also print a string or the message and a value. So in professional, you can use the format function to print values, or else you can use a format specifiers like percentile %f or percentile %d, or else you can directly use a cleaner and preferred version, that is f of f strings. So you can use it in this way. And wherever you want to print some value, you can give a variable inside of the curly braces there itself. So this is how we've learned about print syntaxes. And we also learned about input syntaxes, which are of two types. So directly you can take just the input, and you can also do input, and inside of this you can give a prompt for a user, prompt or a message, so that he can understand what value he want to enter there. So these are the two syntaxes for input function, and we also learned six syntaxes for the print function, and we also learned about the approaches to develop a Python program today. So this is what we learned today. I hope you can practice some problems in your own local machine on your own. You can try and experiment with the variables, and you can try doing this. So tomorrow we will be learning about operators. So we'll start operators tomorrow. And for today, we've covered the approaches, print syntaxes, and input syntaxes. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box. If you want to visit the previous lives, or from day 1 to day 8 lives, you can go to the playlist Python for AI 2026 in our channel, and you can visit the videos. If you want to listen to them, you can listen them, and if you want to revise also, you can just do that. And if you like our videos and our content, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. So tomorrow we'll learn about operators, guys. So that's it for today. Thank you for listening to the class. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat box.